Welcome again to the program where tonight we're going to show how you can close real estate deals and cook bread on the hood of your car without harming the finish at all. Well, maybe not. Old ordinary mentation, that is knowledge-based, as we've been referring to it, temporary map, conclusion-oriented neural activity, in spite of what might seem to be its first purpose and its proper purpose. It is, in a sense that I was going to try and compare, it professes as its aim, as its purpose, to tell people why life and man operates, works as it does, which you might suspect, even without us going into real estate fortunes and that other stuff. Since I brought this up, you might assume here we are staying in the three-dimensional world in our store-bought clothes, dealing with polarized verbal information, that I'm going to compare that probably, in a sense, unfavorably with something else. And the something else, of course, is this very fine carnauba carp. No. I'll get off that. Now I'll get it straight. But it would seem that the purpose, the intent, the goal of explaining why things work, if the intellect has any purpose, and especially if it has any sort of transcendental possibilities of actually explaining, even trying to seriously investigate what in the world is going on with life. And if someone said, well, what's the purpose in even doing this? You would say, well, the purpose, my good man, if you talk like that, you would say, well, the purpose is I want to understand why people behave as they do. I want to understand why life sets up, produces intelligent, decent, fair-minded people like myself, and then gives me the old royal runaround and I can't get rich and famous. It would say, forget the old reporters, the 4 W's of when, why, where, and who. The intellect would seem to be, properly so, focused on why. Now, the comparison I'm going to make would be to, instead of talk about knowledge-based, conclusion-oriented knowledge, is to refer to it as we have been, comparably to thinking instead of knowledge. And the thinking would be in the sense that you'd be dealing with energy waves or packets that would be referring to, be looking toward, compared to why, be looking to how. That's not the best description, but hell, I gave it a good 15 or 20 seconds. And there's not another one. Not for the sake of this kind of polarized jousting tournament. If the ordinary intellect, which that was fair enough, trust me, I'm always fair. I've bent over backwards to be fair with the ordinary intellect. How else could I be? Fair, very fair. Fair and equitable. And do not write me, you fat lexiconist. It's my contention, it's beside the point, but that Dr. Johnson himself pronounced it in that manner. The man did drink, and he did live dangerously close to Scotland, but why, to say that why, the investigation, the kind of activity, the neural activity of the old ordinary mentation of man, right up to date, it is quite fair. It is, in fact, a good, usable, operative description to say that that is what the intellect is pursuing. Why? Again, I repeat, how is not the best, but that doesn't matter. Those of you that can see will begin to see the kind of non-opaque template that this map actually represents. It's kind of a viewfinder. But compared to why, thinking, the process thinking, not the knowledge-based, conclusion-oriented knowledge, but the actual open-ended, non-conclusive, ongoing process of thinking would be directed toward how. Since the how, I admit, is not the best word, just consider it as how things might be arranged, how things might be moving along in a non-personal, non-human, referenced framework of expansion. First off, with just movement. Don't even worry about whether it's growth or progress. Of course, all of you are supposed to know, but just the movement of man's singular world, the secondary world of man. The investigation as opposed to why, which is what the ordinary intellect does, and it doesn't matter how educated, and you do not have to have a degree or even any classes in logic. Everyone's intellect is dealing on the basis of why, as opposed to what I'm trying to point out that would be a non-conclusive oriented, a non-knowledge-based framework of the process of thinking, the ongoing process. It would be looking at how. How might all of this be arranged in such a way that it would be conducive to, tied to, inescapable from, an integral part of movement. Expansion, but at least movement. Whereas knowledge is a nailing down. You cannot collect knowledge any more than those people that like to collect insects. And they, of course, only do it once the insect is no longer alive. I won't lead an attack on those people yet, because most of them live in England. Some of them in Scotland. But they can only collect the butterflies. That is the knowledge. It must be dead. It must be able to be pinned down. That is what would seem to be the proper purpose of the intellect. A why. Why else we've been through this? Why else would the ordinary person, if they were following this for any length of time, why else would they even admit that they do think? That if they're going to think about something, it is to come to some conclusion. It is to give a why to some question, to answer the why. Even though that would seem to be quite properly a fair description of what the intellect should be about, is about, might be wired and primed, constructed for. Also note that under any ordinary conditions, knowledge-based, conclusion-oriented mentation does not actually produce a satisfying conclusion. It never, well, listen quick, you can do this. I was going to say it never reaches a satisfying why, but that's not true. Throughout history it does, but once it reaches to whatever, and I say satisfying, not just to humans, whatever purpose was being served by in life's body for it growing while this question was being asked about why, once the question is answered satisfactorily, it's forgotten. In other words, it is something life outgrew. It was a small virus. It was a chicken pox. It was that its shoes were too tight and it outgrew it, and its mama bought it some bigger shoes. So if indeed any question of why is ever satisfactorily answered, everybody forgets about it. They do not throw parades. It is not, they do not celebrate every year National Answer Day. Nobody thinks back and goes, boy, let's hear it for progress, because how about our forefathers? They worried about why so-and-so happened, and hey, we finally figured it out. Let's hear it for us. Let's hear it for them. Let's hear it for anybody. If indeed, I guess you got that a question could have been said to have been answered on the basis of why, it ceases to be a question. It ceases to have any pertinence in the body of life. It ceases to have any pertinence. It's not even noticed by humanity. But so long as the question is still quick, breathing, alive, inside the life of man, as long as the question is still viable, there is no satisfactory answer to why. Because if it is, you have killed the butterfly. Not only killed it, but you're not even up to the speed of the people who collect such hobbies, because they might go back and look at it. But if humanity on that level is driven to apparently have answered in a satisfactory manner a particular why, the question, that insect has not only been killed and pinned, it's forgotten. Nobody even remembers it. or if it was brought up for some anomalous, meaningless reason that somebody said, why is it that humanity, I was reading an old book, and it said that people used to really sit around and scratch their brains and other parts of their body trying to figure out, why is so-and-so true? And hell, we know. How come nobody remembers? Every time we're bad-mouthing ourselves, how come somebody didn't stand up and say, well, wait a minute, at least we answered that question. Somebody might historically go, well, I guess you're right. Gee, you got anything to drink? It's just meaningless. The point being, again, is the great efficiency of polarized information. Polarized ingestion, combustion, and exhaustion of polarized energy. Because what appears to be, without any doubt, it's not a flawed perception, what would be the only ingenuous description, job description, purpose of ordinary intellect would be to answer all sorts of questions, all the way from science to sociology, psychology, religious, would be to answer why? Why are things like this? Why else does man have an intellect if he's not going to try and pursue the great questions of why? But then, it's not that hard to see. It's not anything. Of course, yes and no. It's not that hard to see, but yes it is. But no, it's not. But that cannot be. I know, and that's what worries that other guy that you heard about. He said, I know that. It's that, without any doubt, that is a fair description as to why a man has an intellect, so he can answer the questions why. But then all you've got to do is note. You don't have to listen to me one time. If you can hear it at all, then you hear, and you realize it's true, that the intellect does not satisfactorily answer why. Now, it deals in this. We'll agree to this, or else all of you would be too spooky. You'd be part of an etch-a-sketch that somebody with the DTs was carrying around. There does seem to be this kind of everyday conclusion. But all of you know what that is. That's like saying, well, let's start getting specific, in case any of you think you're missing it, because it is worthwhile. The idea of why. It being the ordinary intellect's job to pursue this, and it would defend it, and reasonably so. I certainly wouldn't attack it. It takes somebody absolutely outside the mainstream to say, wait a minute, the intellect of all you people is on the wrong track. Your mentation should not be involved in asking why. And if humanity went, well, okay, what should we be doing? You'd be done for. So it is a proper description of what the ordinary mentation should be up to. But also notice, in its attempt to explain the workings of man and life on the basis of why, ordinary mentation, remember, knowledge-based, conclusion-oriented, always must deal with what it appears to be trying to answer. Why? It does so on a self-referring basis, and what it would normally call, I keep saying mentation so as I don't, at least verbally, make it too confusing, is what ordinary people call, of course, thinking. But I wanted to reserve me calling it thinking as opposed to knowledge, as you know we've been doing for the last few times. But what ordinary people would think of as their thinking process, what they call it, is always based upon a thing orientation. That is, even in the non-satisfactory sense, to even talk, to even say that they're involved with some kind of study or investigation or at least interest into why life is as it is, it must be thing-based, or there would not be an end to a sentence. You cannot have action, you cannot have a subject without an object. The sentence would not make sense. We're back to these little ones I let Kyruk pull on you about, that it's now been published in some leading medical journals, or that recent polls show. So this kind of attempted investigation of why is always mortally self-referring, and it's always thing-based. And the whys come out. When I say thing-based, forget science and mathematics, which it still fits in. But the real questions that plague man's soul, the real thing that drives the expansion, the great vivus machina of the secondary world, is the why, the inquiry into human behavior. Now, it's quite decent hobbies and some reputable occupations to be in the sciences. But the why, the curiosity of humanity, has to do with human behavior. So then, what happens to the question of why throughout history? It is always dealt with on these packets or waves of energy. The kind of currency that sort of thinking, that kind of mentation deals with, is always on the basis of things. The answer is range. Well, in fact, I can cover them with two, but why stop there? There are blankets enough for everyone if you will not let the women and children in those boats first. Why is humanity as it is? And humanity says, that's the way God wants it. Hey, take a note. God the thing, not a process. All the religions, all the myths. If that don't get you, I'll get you in just a minute. We'll go from God to Uncle Freud. It's God the thing, willed it, directed it, is directing it, wants it, has set it in motion. Either that or my unconsciousness, the thing. Not a process, my unconsciousness, my personality, the non-conscious parts of my personality. They are driving me. It is driving me. The answer to the ordinary intellect is unsatisfying as it is from a more expansive view, as we said, but it does deal in everyday conclusions, enough that people do not go around pulling their hair out. Ordinary people. The why things happen, why things are as they are, is always quite simple. The answers are always what? It's because of God, it's because of my childhood, because of my social position, because of my poverty. Now, as all of you know, it's not an attack on anything from religion to psychology, because they are very decent, admirable, city, secondary hobbies, and enterprises. But you do know, if you know anything, well, it's beyond knowledge, your little nervous system reacts to it in a certain way. That not just somebody out there, we're not saying, well, other people say, well, God wants it, and we're so sophisticated, we're laughing at those poor fundamentalist right-wingers that believe in that stuff. It's everybody. The ordinary human nervous system dealing in that energy at that level. The answer to why things are as they are, why humans do this, why an individual over here will do such a dastardly thing. Or the question directed to you, how could you have done that? How could that large group of people, how could that whole tribe, that whole nation, how could they have done that? There is a simple answer. Well, God made them do it. The anti-gods made them do it. They fell under the sway of some madman. Why did he do that? And let's assume that you do not have any particular animosity wired up toward, they say, why did that guy you think do that? And you go, Didn't I read that he grew up in an orphanage? Yeah, I think that's what it said in the paper. Well, I mean, I'm not taking up for the man having murdered 14 people. But you ask me why, I'm no psychologist, but I'm just saying, that is the guy who was out in Iowa, yeah. Well, didn't I say, it was not only he not only grew up in an orphanage, wasn't he the one that, even the orphanage, put him up for adoption somewhere else? The first one didn't even want him? Yeah, I think that was him. Then let's assume you're an ordinary, sophisticated, up-to-date human. Is that not an answer? Not a satisfying. It's not supposed to be satisfying, or that'd be the end of that particular line of growth. Amtrak would have closed down that particular line, as of course that was a very poor selection of metaphor, because they should close down Amtrak. I was paid to say that. No. It's too obscure to go into. Although it's unsatisfying in a revolutionist sense, that if you're trying to actually understand what in the hell is going on. But notice at the everyday level, it is accepted. And it's not fallacious, it's just unsatisfying. It is what I meant by everyday, routine, operable conclusions. That there is an answer as to why everything happens. Somebody asks you, suddenly you're caught with your hand where it should not belong. I don't care to go into it. We try to uphold a certain standard of decorum. But let's say that your hand is not where it belongs, and someone goes, oh, and they say, I thought I knew you. Why in the world would you do that? You'll have an answer. My doctor says that I may have a tumor. It's either that or... Nowadays, the most standard one is, well, I don't know, I've been under a great deal of stress. I probably should check in the Betty Ford Jr. Stress Clinic. But there is an answer. The answer to why is always thing-based. Well, all right, I know why you're asking that. I don't want to do it. It's a phobia. It's a mania I have. I've talked to a psychiatrist once, and I told him about doing such as this, and he went, boy, you're nuts. Of course, I didn't pay him, and that's why he said he put it in such crude terms. But the answer, there's always an answer as to why. But it's always thing-based, and it is not, to those few would-be revolutionists always running around, it is not satisfactory. It's not wrong. They're not aggressive anymore if they get past the stupid recruitment stage. They're not angry. They just simply realize that no one on this planet readily talking and writing about why knows any more than I do. That no answer that is available as to why things are as they are, why people do this, why a group does that, why he did that, why she did that, why I do it. The answer, all of them, all the way from religion to psychology, which by God, that covers it all, whether you think so or not. None of them explain anything. They simply point somewhere else. They take processes, the process in this case of being alive, of being a human. They take the process and they kill it. The form of homicide to the neural activities, as is necessary, remember, as is proper at all secondary levels. And they turn the process into knowledge. And in a sense, they have committed terminal mayhem on any further potential. Now the new intellect, which gets a little trickier. Has anybody ever noticed, some of you have, why it seems to be easier to talk about what things are not than what they are? It's not an excuse, but everybody should know that by now. I just never talked about it, and I assume that, I guess I should sometime, but you can go ahead and do it on your own now. I don't have to talk about it. Why is that? My God, that's true. Why does it say what things are not better than is what they are? And I don't mean just this, friends and neighbors. I mean EFT. You got it. That is not one of the spur lines of Amtrak up around Chesapeake Bay either. But at any rate, the thinking process being open-ended, non-conclusive, alive, plain thought, plain directed, stripped down version, even neuter than it was when it took everything off. That would be dealing with the questions. But now you'd, of course, be good enough that they would not be limited to verbal questions, but since I'm talking, we got to pull them back to that level. To the kinds of questions as to why human life operates in this way. When you've already got the basis of me asking you to, why is it things, it seems to be easier to say what things are not than they are, and some of you made mental note to pursue it. There it is, by the way. As abstract as it may have sounded, is the intellect would be looking at the why is things as they are. Well, the little hint I was trying to give. It would take a sidestep and say, why is it that I wonder that everybody else's explanation doesn't get it? Why is it I'm looking further? Everybody else seems satisfied, even those people are not satisfied. They're satisfied because they say, no, that's not true. And they'll get out and march. They'll start a war. So one side or the other has got to be right. I mean, if I disagree, when they say, well, this is the answer as to why people do so and so, let's say it's the Freudian answer, whatever that is. And I realize, wait a minute, that's not an answer. That doesn't satisfy me. And then you find out that there are militant groups of anti-Freudians There's your answer. You think abstract was too much of another case of meiosis? You pursue it. They're trying to go along the lines of thinking, of being non-conclusive based and oriented as to how, as opposed to why, would then open up what I'm trying to point toward, trying to see the complete, or a more complete, universal, non-referral, non-personal, non-local view, not as to why this is happening, but how all of this could be connected and tied into the growth of a living system. Life! Then you're onto something. Because whys are just, it's not right or wrong, it's just a hobby. It's stamp collecting. It's the, I notice I got a few laughs, but I'm not sure all of you got the complete symbolism of the guy staying out in that soggy gray field, being continually struck by lightning and chemical spills. Everybody laughed, and then I got the impression that maybe some of you didn't go any further as to where that guy might have been standing, that such a thing would happen. Go back to the point. I always like a little joke myself. Not quite that little, however. The how would be a kind of continuing survey rather than trying to kill, trying to stop the train, trying to pass yourself in the car ahead with knowledge, which cannot be done. Was you're past the point. You see why I compared why to who. I mean to how. Is it why, at the ordinary level, the intellect can deal with that. That's all it can deal with. But what it comes out with, when it hands you, the output, you're never satisfied. Everybody else seems satisfied, even those who are not satisfied, or satisfied with the fact they're not satisfied. That's why they're militantly opposed to whatever it is that you go, well, I'm not sure. You're just too lazy to go join the people that say, wait a minute, don't say you're not sure. We're sure that's not right. Come join us. If you had any gumption about you, you'd get up and go over and join them. See what I mean? You would be as polarized as everyone else. Not to be polarized is to pursue something that tonight we're calling how things might work, how human behavior might be as it is. Not why, but how it might be as it is in any particular case, in any historic scenario, how, on the basis of how this fits in, how this would spur, how this would interlock, how this would link up with, how this would feed, how this would help transfer energy to make a living system grow. And at a very selfish level, you could say the living system, humanity. But then you got to see that humanity's, the whole question of what's the purpose of life cannot ever be answered as long as you're dealing on the basis of why are humans like this, which is the best ordinary intellect can do. It's always why. Even those that would claim in their preface to their question to have a more cosmic view, religious people, theologians, metaphysicists that claim, well, wait, I'm not just interested in my own little piss-poor existence. I want to know what's going on. And neither they do not. Because they can try and protect themselves. They can try and shut off the mea culpa to start with. That, well, now wait, I'm interested in gigantic questions. You should know they're not. You don't look at them and my gestures, look at you. People that say, well, I want to know, it's really, I don't feel perhaps that I'm on the same level as St. Thomas Aquinas or St. John of the Cross. But I want to know why it is that humanity seems to have this dark cloud over it. Now, a man can say that, but you got to be just an ordinary run-of-the-mill city person to know, to not know, that the man can say that. And he may write poetry. He may become famous for saying that, but he's saying that for one reason. He's driven to say that through his own nervous system for one reason. Life is pissing on his foot. He is not saying, I want these great philosophical answers to satisfy my objective curiosity as to why there seems to be a certain kind of inescapable, long-range, broad suffering of humanity. He can say all that all he wants to. What he's saying is, I got the blues. That's all he's saying. There are people that want to say, I let a Kairut slip it in on you a few nights before about the guy that I gave you a way out. We said that he might have been a sorehead, or at least he was certainly a man with an attitude. That he claimed that all romantic poetry, you recall, was just written by guys that couldn't call fucking. The people who say, I worry about the future of humanity. I am concerned, to the point that I sit and cry alone in my room. And I'm not saying, they're not lying, but they say, I sit and cry when I hear of one man's humanity to another. He says that, but what's causing it is somebody else's inhumanity to him. That's it. You have got to be able, which an ordinary man cannot. The reason I went through that, as you know, is not to attack even a poet. What if you had, maybe it's poets now running Amtrak. I don't want to think about it. See, if you had any sense, that's 3 jokes I made, you would assume that in some way Amtrak has misused me lately. But see, I could make it sound like, well, the breakdown of what was an erstwhile, decent, if not enjoyable form of transportation, the American railroad system, and now bureaucracy and et cetera, and I could be saying a word. See, I told you it's obscure earlier, but I figured, why not drag it out? If this was ordinary conditions, then some way you'd have to, if I was just ordinary and this was just everyday things, and some guy started talking like, you got to know Amtrak in some way is run over his toe lately. Or he wouldn't be doing this. He could be talking about my philosophical interest in justice and equality and decency. It's love poetry, written as that guy surmised or guessed. It's just written by guys that couldn't call fucking. It's been going thousands of years. But it has nothing to do with, or it's not limited to, I should say, the sex act vis-a-vis the idea of romantic love. We're back to the question of the primary world not being able to speak, and if it did speak, it would be engaged in plain speak, which it's not. And then to the secondary world, which cannot be plain speak, it has to be knowledge-based, conclusive-oriented, and so it has to talk about something. And it has to be something that is singular to man's world. So love, sex becomes love. It is a continuing talking. It is a continuing, apparently getting to an end of a sentence in some way, making a conclusion, and the conclusion is not actually explanatory. But nobody's getting where to turn. And so you can hear that this is today's greatest example of romantic poetry. And you read it or you hear it read and you think, Jesus, that sucks. You can say that. But if you're going to be passionate enough, you would find a group. Let's say that you went to a place that was called Contemporary Poetries, Poets. And so they gave you a good dose of contemporary poetry and you heard it, you thought, that sucks. Then if you were actually engaged in open-ended thinking processes, you would go find a society, a group somewhere called Jesus, That Sucks. And if there weren't one, you would start one. That would be, you would be getting closer, it'd be irrelevant, but you would be getting closer to an exposition. You would never get there, but in a sense you'd be getting closer. But it would all be back where we were. What I'm referring to as a thinking process as opposed to knowledge-based or conclusion-based knowledge. A questioning, a pursuit along the areas, the lines of how as opposed to why. It would be that whatever is going on, if it's going on enough that you observe it, it's going on enough that it just catches your attention. That means that the electrical, chemical basis of it is alive enough that it's dragging people into the field of being hit and being spilled upon and transforming the energy. So whatever the area is, if it was enough to attract you and you thought about it, forget why, there is a how going on because that is serving some purpose. But notice if you're operating at the ordinary level, it's inescapable. And you say, well, wait a minute, why? Why would one man treat another man in that way? There is no answer. And every now and then, of course, life has some. In the past, it's usually been a critic of religion. It could be a critic of philosophy. If some critic is pretty anomalous, will stand up and say, well, I'll tell you why. Because you people, you religious people. I didn't lose you to that. Somebody will say, how is it that our country is Christian or Jewish or Muslim and we're all decent people? How is it that this kind of ungodly activity can transfer between humans? Then a critic will say, well, I'll tell you why. That's because the whole idea, the whole basis of religion and God and Allah, you people are nuts. That's the answer. And of course, that doesn't satisfy. But there is also, notice, no satisfactory response to that. Well, the priest or the rabbi or somebody can say, well, screw you. But that's about the best they can do. Because if somebody says, well, wait a minute. I've been listening to you. I read your book. I've been to your services. And I heard you talk about the great power and the decency and the insight of God or Jehovah or Allah. Yeah. I've been here. But let me tell you what. Last night, and you relay some despicable, some heart-rendering accident that happened to you. You say, tell me, explain that. And that's when, of course, I say that about the only thing the guy can do is say, get lost. Because there is no satisfactory. And everybody knows it in a way that's meaningless. It has to be on the basis. You didn't get lost, did you? You cannot isolate. If you take what happens in life, the process of life, and you stop it, you freeze frame it again, you come to what you try to make an end of a sentence. That is, you take universal matters, as ordinary intellect must do, and you turn it into a local affair, and you look at it and you go, wait a minute, how can this happen? What is the explanation? Why does this happen? When you have done that, there is no answer. And everybody knows there is no answer. That's why I was saying it as a kind of everyday conclusion. People just shrug it off. That's why I stopped. That's why I'm stopping again. I'm stopping on top of stopping, you notice. That's why I'm pointing out to you that even those that would seem to be in the field of great cosmological answers, formerly known in some areas still as ministers and theologians and etc., you ask them, why are things like this? And the best they can tell you is, we don't know. Which is another way of saying, well, it's what God wants. We just got to accept it. That does not explain it. But as long as you're asking why, you won't get a better answer than that. There is none. You can look anywhere you want to. And many ordinary people would say, oh, yeah, you're right. Boy, religion doesn't know anything. At least I'm glad I'm up to date. I guess if I had a religion, you'd have to call my religion modern analysis or modern psychology. And so what does it answer? Well, why would somebody do this despicable thing since God didn't make him do it? Oh, now you're getting smarter, would say life. His subconscious made him do it. All right, what made his subconscious make him do it? Well, it's interesting you should ask because I have to know some background about this guy. His mother didn't wear underwear when she went out in public, and she used to drink lighter fluid. All right, okay, well, I've never heard of that, but Jesus. Why do you think she did that? Why? Well, all right, wait a minute. Everybody knows that, huh? We don't deserve any medals for having to bring that up because no theologian, no psychologist, no human who can talk can answer why. But it's part of the job of human institutions. It's part of the job of apparently there being knowledge, expertise external to each individual to whom you look, that is, institutions, to which you look, to the churches, to the world of academia, to the sciences. You look to them and you say, well, why? Why did this happen to me? Why does humans still treat other humans this way? And there's some answer forthcoming. If it's not from religion, it's from psychology. But I repeat, do not wait to get any awards, you, me, or anybody to point that out because everybody knows that. They just know it at a meaningless level. There is no answer as to why. Because if you say, well, I'll tell you why, I'll tell you exactly why. And let's say they come up with a good, modern, up-to-date psychological explanation. but it is always thing-based. It always points at something, and normally a person. They might get a little sly with you. Instead of saying, well, his mother made him do it, they could say, well, poverty. But they'll always point at something as though poverty was actually something hiding in an alleyway. That if his mother didn't mistreat him, poverty. Or if that sounds too strong, the man was an artist. Lack of recognition. I mean, that explains he just killed 14 people in a supermarket, a Ralph's out in L.A. And you say, well, what happened? I bet his mother was a bitch. He had a fine mother. She was a minister, as a matter of fact. Well, I bet his father wasn't even at home. His father lived at home. He hardly ever left. He prayed a lot. He did not drink. And he talked to the child all the time. Well, wait a minute. What could be wrong? And then somebody will say, do you know that kid we found in his room, he has been trying to paint ever since he was a child, ever since he was a little nipper. We've been talking to his family. They say, yes, he spent all of his money buying paints and canvas. And anybody that sees it kind of goes, well. And so the person giving the explanation as to why goes, all right, so it wasn't his mother, wasn't his father. Oh, aha! Lack of artistic recognition. As though that were a something, not a process, but as a something. Do you understand? Once again, if I took ordinary people and I said, wait a minute, you're falling into what I'm talking about process as opposed to knowledge. And they'd go, no, you're wrong. Because here we'll prove you're wrong. Because lack of recognition is not a thing. Lack of recognition is a part of a continuing dynamic in this poor chap's life. But is it? Is that what the intellect is saying? Once I pointed out, the intellect could say, that is what we're saying. We're not stupid. Lack of recognition is not a person in some kind of coke back here with a hat pulled over their eyes and doing evil, having evil machinations having to do with somebody's life. We know that. No, they don't. It's not about if they don't know it. The intellect cannot operate on the basis of that kind of energy. Because as soon as it said that, and I went, well, I guess you got me. You're right. I don't know how I could have thought you were that dumb. Well, I got to go. And they said, well, me too. And the whole idea of them saying that they understand that lack of recognition would be in quotation marks. Lack of recognition is not a something. It's not a thing. It would be an activity. Or they might say to me, what you're calling processes. But as soon as I said, well, I got to go. And they said, me too. Glad to talk to you. It becomes a thing. It's not because of stupidity. It is the intellect cannot operate unless it is knowledge-based, unless it is conclusion-oriented. And so it operates operationally, an operational synonym, in this case, for a thing, instead of a drunken father, instead of an evil spirit. Lack of recognition is the thing. It is the thing by the packet of energy driving the intellect to make the observation in this case, to respond to, why did this guy kill 14 people in a supermarket, especially close to the fruits and vegetables? Lack of artistic recognition. Oh, I was afraid maybe it was the devil made him do it. No, I don't believe in devils. Of course, we're not even asking whether he believed in devils, but whoever's telling you why he did it. Well, I always heard that demons made people do stuff like, oh, no, wasn't a demon. You go, oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. You didn't ask him, do you believe in demons? They go, oh, no, it wasn't that. And you go, oh, okay. Well, I wonder what it was. Probably a bad childhood. No, he had an exemplary childhood. Whew. Well, damn, I wonder what caused it. Well, it's a good thing you ran across me. It was lack of artistic recognition. How about I've got another myth for you. I got a myth, an heretofore untold myth for Earth. All right, in spite of what you might think that we've talked about around here before, what this myth says is that there is knowledge, just in the ordinary sense, just knowledge that is not known to ordinary men. Which, I must admit to you, is the legitimate basis for the belief in the first two fingers on your own secret knowledge. Well, Kant and his brother already proved that you do not have to believe in fingers to have them. It is the legitimate basis of this continuing belief in secret knowledge. But here is what it is, according to the myth, that there is knowledge that's not known by ordinary men. But it's on the basis that this other knowledge was never put in words. During its time. It's always that, of course. Didn't like that myth there. Well, look at this. The Brothers Grimm had to write 200 or 300 to ever get anywhere. Think about it. That there is knowledge at any given time. Now, I threw in, you people have got to be past the point of being stuck in spatial, much less temporal divisions of what humanity is about, because if you're going to do that, you're back to why. Why did one thing cause another? Why did this happen when there seems to be no historical, no sequential cause? Either that or no moralistic or no morally justifiable cause. Beyond that, outside of that kind of sequential, limited, conclusion-oriented thinking, in other words, we talk about any time you want to pick, now and not now. At any now and not now, there was knowledge, there is knowledge, that is not known to ordinary people, to ordinary intelligence. But it's on the basis that the knowledge now, the knowledge at not now, is because the knowledge was never put in verbal form. There is the basis, the legitimate basis of it going from that to there being secret knowledge, which I know is why I said, in spite of what some of you think you've heard, that I use it as a kind of a weather vane at time, and I know it produces humor, and sometimes I try to caution against sarcasm, especially those of you that spent a large part of your life believing in secret knowledge, and you're the ones that really yuck it up when I apparently poke fun at it, and you go, ha ha, boy, I'm glad I'm not that dumb. As if you figure I don't know anything. As if I didn't know that you spent 20 years. See, I didn't embarrass you. There is a legitimate basis for there being secret knowledge, for that belief, because in a sense it is. But what I want you to hear is it's not secret. It's not that there's one guy or one group that's got the secret, that's got the knowledge and simply won't let it out. It's that at any time there is that knowledge, there is another knowledge. But the division, the distinction between this, let's just call it the other knowledge, and everyday knowledge of all stripes. The difference is, ordinary knowledge doesn't even exist until it's put in words. And this other knowledge, the distinction that I'm using tonight, is that it is never, during its time, it is never put in verbal form. What could be simpler than that? Of course, I might also point out while we're here, remember I entitled this, An Unknown Myth for Earth. One reason this myth is unknown is nobody has ever put in words before. How about another? We can get crude, can't we? You mean cruder? No. A not totally unrelated aspect to this great old question of people saying, why can't humans tell the truth? Why can't we just, whatever it is they mean by tell the truth, and you know as well as I do what they mean because you've said it and you've thought it. The question is on the basis still of why. Why can't people tell the truth? And the answers are always something such as, well, social pressure, or a person has an unconscious desire because of things specific in their past, family, lack of recognition. That the why they can't tell the truth is because of these non-conscious limits, these unconscious grips on their mentation, on their consciousness. Or maybe social pressure. Their position in life is such. Their assumed gentility. Their concern for their fellow men. Their sense of propriety. Their following of a certain humanistic, if not religious, set of doctrines, dogmas that say that one should not talk like that. Forget all that. Just, you can forget it. There's a quite real standing out in the gray marsh, being continually struck by lightning and being the victim of nonstop chemical spills. See, at least I didn't let Kyrute slip in the part about the guy was staying there smiling. Staying there pleasantly being continually struck, at any rate. The whole thing about why can't people tell the truth? There is no, we're not going to stop and say, well, is that correct or not? Is it that people can't tell the truth? The answer is, again, I will go back to Kyrute, the answer is yes and no. Well, what do you mean? Well, yes and no. But that can't literally be true. I know that. That was a polarized scenario, and it's supposed to be stretching that coincidental relationship about how far the top of the planet is from the bottom. The question, forget whether it's true or not, whether it's correct in some greater fashion. It is operational within the mentation of man because people keep saying, why can't we tell the truth? People even say about themselves, why is it I can't tell the truth? At times I want to tell, somebody will say, how do you like my new hair? And I want to go, or what do you think of my new theory? Why can't I tell the truth? I just know I'd be a much happier person if they didn't kill me, if I could tell the truth. Forget all the reasons that you've ever heard, because you're already supposed to know, without me having to do much more of a gesture, that all the reasons you ever heard, that didn't explain anything. Did they? Come on, no. I'm going to tell you why, as life puts it, as people put it at the promptings of life. Why can't we just tell the truth? I'm just going to take their description, your description, and I'm going to tell you why. And we're still speaking about human behavior. Why did you do that? Why? Let's keep it at a personal level and make it fast. Plus, it's the best possible example. That one person asked another. The old man asked the kid. A mother asked a daughter asked a brother. A president asked a prime minister. One person asked another, why do you do so-and-so? Why did you decide to become a doctor? Why are you so shy? Why do you seem to have a certain aggressiveness toward members of the opposite sex, or people who only wear one shoe? Is that where that came from? And then you say, well, people can't tell the truth. You ask, why is it you became a doctor? And the guy says, oh, I wanted to help humanity. And let's say that you're wired up, pretty ordinary. You're sitting there, and for some reason, the lightning and the chemical spills are such in your field that you're hostile. And if we said, why are you hostile toward doctors? Then somebody would jump up and say, wait a minute. I grew up with this guy, and he hates people who are smarter than he is. And so it's not just doctors. If you start asking about anybody with more education, especially a professional, he'd hate them. That's why. Why did you become a doctor? I wanted to serve my fellow man. And so this guy, he turns to somebody, his own kid or neighbor, and he says, what a bunch of baloney. Became a doctor because greed, the big bucks, playing God. Oh, you've heard all the explanations. Why are you so shy? Well, I didn't want to go into it, but if you're really interested, well, my father died at a very early age. And let us say that you were staying back and you went, I don't believe that. I've heard that. I got nothing against psychology in general. I guess I do. But I don't believe all that. Why don't people tell the truth? Why are they shy? There's got to be something closer. All right. I'm going to tell you why people do not tell the truth. as they call it. I wouldn't have called it that. But they call it that. Life makes them call it that, and they've been debating it, thinking why, asking why, attempting to answer the question, why are people not able to just tell the truth? Are you ready? We're going to get down right to the end, and I can close with this one. In the sense they mean it, they're correct. People cannot tell the truth. But I'm going to tell you why. Because the answer to all inquiries having to do with human nature is one answer. And the answer is, I don't know. What they're calling tell the truth, that is the answer. Why did you become an accountant? I don't know. Why have you got such a kind of shitty attitude toward life? I don't know. Why are you so religious? Why are you so devoted to your church? I don't know. Why do you seem to be so close to your mother? I don't know. Why do you hate your father? I don't know. That is the answer, as they call it, to all the inquiries as to why, having to do with any form of human behavior, the whole activities of the secondary world. The answer is, I don't know. Why did you decide you wanted to be president, sir? I don't know. Why did you even enter the ministry? Much less, and strive through all the heartache to become Pope. Why did you do that? I don't know. That is what they're saying. And of course, they don't understand that. That couldn't happen. But that is the reason. I'm using their basis of why can't people tell the truth? Why can't people tell the truth? The reason is because there's one answer to every question in the secondary world regarding human behavior, and it's, I don't know. If that were allowed to happen, all human conversation would cease in less than 2 days. And that would be detrimental to the continuing expansion. And detrimental is, again, a meiosis, a terribly egregious understatement. The secondary world would be detrimentally impacted without human conversation. The truth being, without human conversation, as we've already been through, you people established that to my satisfaction several weeks ago. Were it not for human conversation, the secondary world would die. What is the difference between us, as much as I love them, and hippos and warthogs, besides us having thumbs and polyester clothes, is that we talk. The secondary world would not be alive, much less expand, but it would not even exist. Is why I say that the purpose of me saying why that within 2 days human conversation would cease, it's not just that, well, hey, big deal, we'd miss human conversation. It'd be shortly after that, all of this would be gone. So that's why, as they put it, people can't tell the truth. Because the truth is 3 words. To all inquiries as to why things are as they are in the secondary world. Why? You're a member of you're a Scandinavian. Why did you people so mistreat the Canadians? I'm just making this up. And all the Swedes stand up and say, I don't know. Or you ask a historian. You are the leading expert into the movements of such a group of people, such a religious, such an economic. You ask any world expert. And so I'm just trying to expand just from individual behavior, which I guess it did get most of it. But if you ask anybody, why? You're the leading expert. You won the prizes in this field. Yes, I did. Well, let me ask you one question. Why did such and such country go to war with such and such country? Or why did this group try to impose their economic theories on that one? And here's a man that got a string of awards, the world's leading expert in this field. And he says, I'll tell you the truth. And you say, all right, I don't know. It's not silly. Remember, just because something makes you laugh does not mean it's a joke. That is the answer at the secondary level. In fact, I'm really stretching reality, but you would know if you're just out in the ordinary world. You might have some cause to stop for a second if you begin to run across a guy, I mean this in a mythical sense, just some ordinary guy that you tried to talk to him, and whatever you ask, he said, I don't know. Which, of course, the tapes run out, but that brings up a good old joke about the guy sitting around a service station out in Oklahoma. And a limo pulls up, and the window comes down. The guy says, how do you get to Dallas from here? The guy says, well, normally my brother takes me. No, that's another. That's another joke. No, the joke is this. The guy says, I'm looking for the Bernard Ranch. Do you know where it is? The guy says, no. He says, well, it's supposed to be close to Black Snake, Oklahoma. I mean, where is that? The guy says, I don't know. And he says, well, it's supposed to be close to the Green Tree River. It's supposed to be running right close to it. Where is that? And the guy says, I don't know. And from the limousine, a voice says, well, you don't know much, do you? And the guy says, no, but at least I ain't lost.